From the long list of things the Soviet Union was fighting against, I found one of the most absurd: being unemployed. The state that had abolished unemployment by constitution also made it a crime. In a country built by workers in the name of workers, the one thing you could go to prison for was failing to be one. Every Soviet citizen carried a labor book, a small gray record of every job they had ever held, kept by the employer rather than the worker. Without a current stamp inside, you were something the state had not yet decided how to name. The system, in exchange for that booklet, offered a genuine deal: a job guaranteed by the Constitution, an apartment through the workplace, healthcare, childcare, holidays. Your factory ran your life, essentially, from the cradle to the sanatorium. The catch was that the factories were stuffed with people who had very little to do. Managers hoarded workers to survive the production panic at the end of each cycle. 3 weeks idle, 1 week frantic. The workers had a name for this arrangement: we pretend to work, and they pretend to pay us. In the West, losing your job was unfortunate but unremarkable. You collected benefits and found another one. In the Soviet Union, unemployment had been abolished by constitution, which left only one word for the people who fell outside the system: a parasite. The definition of parasite covered rather more ground than you might expect. Beggars and tramps, obviously. Small-time market traders. People who bought goods and resold them at a profit. Religious believers who rested on the Sabbath. So far, the law sounds almost defensible. But then you keep reading. A man renting out his country house. A woman sewing dresses at home. A carpenter taking private work. A pensioner selling vegetables from his own garden. A housewife raising children. Nobody had planned for the last two, and the authorities were quietly embarrassed when both categories appeared in the statistics. But the law did not include an exception for embarrassment. And finally, a poet. In the first year alone, roughly 130,000 people in the Russian Republic were officially classified as parasites. Many were exiled. That number does not include the people pressured into taking unskilled jobs just to avoid the paperwork. It is only the official count in one republic in 1 year. Those processed under the decree received a formal status designation, meaning having no specific occupation. Interestingly, the same abbreviation in Soviet criminal slang also meant stray dog. Whether intentional or not, nobody in the government addressed it. Once assigned that status, a person lost the right to remain in their home city and was relocated to a designated area chosen by the state, typically far from their family and their ordinary life. The most documented case of the parasite law in action is that of Joseph Brodsky, a poet from Leningrad. In late 1963, a local newspaper labeled him a literary drone and a parasite. He was arrested shortly after and tried in early 1964. The court's position was straightforward. Writing poetry did not count as work. The fact that Brodsky disagreed and said so clearly during the trial did not change the outcome. He was sentenced to 5 years of forced labor. The Soviet state had identified a poet as a threat to the productivity of the nation and responded accordingly. A journalist named Frida Vigdorova attended the trial and recorded the proceedings despite being ordered to stop. Her notes reached Western publications and drew significant international attention. Appeals from prominent figures in Soviet and international cultural life contributed to his early release after 18 months. He was expelled from the country in 1972 and awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1987. The Soviet Union had promised to liberate the worker. It had simply forgotten to specify from what. Yugoslavia under Joseph Brodsky had broken with the Soviet model in 1948 and spent the following decades building its own version. When unemployment became a problem in the early 1960s, the Yugoslav government made a decision that Moscow would never have considered. It opened the border and let people leave to find work abroad. By 1971, roughly 850,000 Yugoslav citizens were working in Western Europe, most of them in West Germany. The official government term for these workers was workers temporarily employed abroad. In practice, most of them stayed for years. They sent money home, rebuilt villages, and brought back savings, skills, and occasionally a Volkswagen. The arrangement embarrassed the government on principle. Yugoslav intellectuals and student protesters pointed out correctly that sending workers to capitalist factories was an admission that the socialist economy could not employ its own people. The government had no strong counter-argument, but the money kept coming in, so the arrangement continued. Both countries had unemployment they were not supposed to have. One criminalized it, The other exported it and collected the earnings. One sent its people to Siberia. The other sent its people to Stuttgart. Money was never what people lacked. That was the strange part. Wages came in, savings grew, and all of it sat there doing very little because there was almost nothing on the shelves to buy. The economy the law was protecting had solved the wrong problem. So a new national pastime was born, not chess or vodka, standing in line. People queued for hours and often joined a line before they even knew what it was selling, on the sound logic that a line this long had to be hiding something good. By one estimate, the country spent 30 to 40 million hours a year doing this. Most of those hours were spent by women, which tells you who was really holding the economy together. The shortages got absurd. In one region, dairy workers reportedly milked cows wrapped in bed sheets because the factory had no work clothes. In 2 cities, students could not finish their assignments because the shops had run out of pens. An apartment meant a 10 to 15-year wait. A car took years, if it came at all. A Hungarian economist called it the economy of shortage. The shortages were the system working as designed, a plan that managed everything except what people actually wanted to buy. Money could not fix this, so something else did. The country that was supposed to run on the plan actually ran on favors. Soviet life depended on a quiet web of personal connections, who you knew and what they could get for you. When money bought nothing, access became the real currency, and access ran through people. A shop clerk who set aside the best meat for a regular customer was not breaking the system. He was the system. He was the part of it that worked. Some people took it further. Across the country, men ran secret factories, hidden production lines making the shoes and clothes the official economy never delivered. Capitalists, inside a country that had outlawed capitalism. The smart ones stayed quiet. The unlucky ones did not. Nothing summed it up like a pair of jeans. A single pair of Western denim could cost a month's wages on the black market. In 1961, 2 black market traders were handed the maximum penalty, and dealing in jeans was one of the charges against them. People were risking everything over trousers. The people the state hunted as enemies of the people were the same ones keeping the country fed and clothed. The law was built to punish those who contributed nothing. In practice, it kept arresting the only ones who did. The idea was not a bad one. A society where no one was thrown away, a guaranteed job, a roof, a doctor when you needed one. That is not a cynical thing to want, and plenty of Soviet citizens genuinely had it. A 2018 poll found that 2/3 of Russians still regretted the collapse of the Soviet Union, the highest figure recorded since it fell. What they missed was the security, the certainty that tomorrow would look more or less like today. That part was real. People miss it for a reason. The trouble started when the appearance of work mattered more than the work itself. Factories padded with people who had nothing to do, whole months spent idle, waiting for the panic at the end. A poet sent to chop wood in the Siberia because no one could find the right box to file him under. The state needed the stamp in the labor book because the stamp was the only proof it had that the whole arrangement was functioning. Whether anything useful was being produced was a quieter question. Here is what I take from all this. Work is good. Contributing to society is good. That is not the problem. The problem is what happens when work has to be performed for its own sake, just to count, no matter what comes out of it. And the deeper problem is what happens when the work does not pay enough to live on, and the state insists you do it anyway. The Soviet parasite law itself was quietly amended in 1965, after too many pensioners and housewives ended up in the statistics. But the law was never repealed. It stayed on the books until the country that wrote it stopped existing. And in 2015, the idea came back. The president of Belarus signed a decree called On Prevention of Social Dependency, which imposed a tax on citizens working less than 183 days a year. The official term for the people it targeted was social parasites. Mass protests in several cities forced the government to suspend it 2 years later. Any system that has to arrest people to prove it is working has already stopped working. The labor book outlived the country that invented it. The form survives. Whether there is anything behind the form, is still the harder question.